So we've spent $1 trillion, and we've given this money to universities, and they're supposed to encourage poor kids to go to college. But we don't know how many poor kids went to college who otherwise wouldn't have gone to college and graduated, right?
Correct.
Well, what do your audits show?
Well, that's the issue, and I mentioned it when I was
Are you able to audit?
We're not. We're not able to audit, and there are constraints against the TRIO program for its accountability. The other issue with...
Well, but I'm sorry to cut you off, but I don't have much time. So we spent $1 trillion. We gave it to the colleges. We said encourage poor kids to go to college. We don't know how many kids went to college because you don't have the authority to audit. How do you know these universities are not just using the money to operate instead of encouraging poor kids to go to college? President Trump has said that Harvard is violating federal law and he's withholding their money. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And Harvard has responded, we've never violated federal law, but if we did, we give you a pinky promise that we won't do it again. Is that right?
Yes.
Welcome back, Patriots. You're watching Founding Voice America, where truth has no filter, freedom has no leash, and government waste gets called out for what it is. Now I hope you're sitting down for this one, because what I'm about to break down for you is not just a scandal. It's not just a mistake. It's a revelation, a painful, infuriating, jaw-dropping look into how your hard-earned tax dollars are being flushed down the bureaucratic toilet with absolutely no accountability. Let's talk about the Department of Education's so-called TRIO program, and how, by their own admission, they've spent upwards of $1.5 billion every year. That's right, billion with a B, on this program, and they can't tell you what we got for it. Now folks, this isn't a one-off mistake. This isn't an oops, the check got lost. This is decades of government spending, totaling what one senator estimates at over $1 trillion, and whether you agree with the math or not, let's be clear. We're talking massive, generational spending. So what is TRIO supposed to do? Apparently, and I say apparently because the Department of Education can't even clearly define it, TRIO gives money to colleges and universities so they can encourage poor kids to go to college. Let me stop right there. That's it. We're handing out billions of taxpayer dollars to encourage kids? No measurements. No follow-ups. No success rate. Just encouragement. Are you kidding me? Here's where it gets truly outrageous. The senator asks the Secretary of Education, how many poor kids who otherwise wouldn't have gone to college have now graduated because of TRIO? Answer: I don't know. No data. No tracking. No clue. This isn't just incompetence. This is malpractice. You see, in the real world where you and I live, when we invest money, we expect results. If you spend $1,000 fixing your truck, you expect that thing to run. You don't throw away $1 trillion and say, well, I hope it worked. But in Washington, that's just business as usual. And then we find out they can't even audit the program. Let that sink in. The Department of Education does not even have the authority to audit how the money is being used. Think about that. We send billions of dollars to colleges, and we don't even check the receipts. What this really shows, folks, is how detached the federal government has become from the people who fund it, the American taxpayer. You work overtime, pay your taxes, run your business, raise your family, and they take your money and hand it off to woke universities with no accountability, no transparency, and apparently not even a clue where it goes. And don't let the name TRIO or Gear Up fool you. These sound nice and cozy, but it's just another bureaucratic slush fund wrapped in a feel-good label.
Madam Secretary, I want to welcome, by the way, I want to ask you about the TRIO program that has been mentioned, and its sister program, Gear Up. We spend $1.58 billion a year on TRIO?
Yes.
That's $1,580 million a year. Is my math right?
I think that's right, sir.
And how long have we been spending $1,580 million a year on this program?
I'm not sure of the total length of time of the program.
More than 10 years?
Yes.
So that's over $1 trillion we've spent on this program. And in this program, this $1 trillion we've spent, we give this money, as I appreciate it, to colleges and universities to encourage poor kids to go to college. Is that right?
To provide some of those kids who have not yet been exposed to what it takes to get ready to go to college.
Okay. To encourage poor kids to go to college, right?
Yes.
Okay. And given that we've spent $1 trillion, how many poor kids who otherwise wouldn't have gone to college have gone to college and graduated?
A significant number, I would imagine.
How many?
I don't know exactly.
Isn't that a question we should ask?
I think so, and I'd be happy to get back to you with that answer. You know, the other thing about the...
But wait, Madam Secretary, I'm not fussing at you. Do we have that number?
I don't think so.
I'm looking, we don't have it.
I don't think so, because there is the...
Well, if we were, so we've spent $1 trillion, and we've given this money to universities, and they're supposed to encourage poor kids to go to college. But we don't know how many poor kids went to college who otherwise wouldn't have gone to college and graduated, right?
Correct.
Well, what do your audits show?
Well, that's the issue, and I mentioned it when I was...
Are you able to audit?
We're not. We're not able to audit, and there are constraints against the TRIO program for its accountability. The other issue with...
Well, but I'm sorry to cut you off, but I don't have much time. So we spent $1 trillion. We gave it to the colleges. We said encourage poor kids to go to college. We don't know how many kids went to college because you don't have the authority to audit. How do you know these universities are not just using the money to operate instead of encouraging poor kids to go to college?
I'm not sure.
You don't know how?
No.
Because you can't audit.
Correct.
You understand hope is not a strategy.
Yes, sir.
I mean, if you told the average American, we just spent $1 trillion of your money, and we gave it to colleges and universities, and we said encourage poor kids to go to college, but we don't know how many kids went to college who otherwise wouldn't have gone and who graduated. You understand the average American would ask us what planet we just parachuted in from, right?
That's right. You know, Senator, if I may, there's one other issue on the TRIO program. What we have found
I'm going to run out of time. You can make it fast.
Take your time back then.
Let me ask you a question about our skirmish with Harvard. And I don't want to get into the merits. President Trump has said that Harvard is violating federal law and he's withholding their money. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And Harvard has responded, we've never violated federal law, but if we did, we give you a pinky promise that we won't do it again. Is that right?
Yes.
And then President Trump said, okay, no offense, but, you know, I just want to be sure. So why doesn't Harvard, I will give Harvard the authority to appoint a monitor, pick whomever they want. The federal government has the right to veto the pick. So if they pick their brother-in-law, that wouldn't be fair. And Harvard has said, no, you just have to trust us. You have to accept our pinky promise. Is that basically what's going on?
Well, and not only that, but Harvard did respond to our request for negotiations with a lawsuit.
Well, but
we're in the throes
if
of
we,
litigation.
if Harvard would just agree to a monitor, that would solve the problem, wouldn't it?
Might serve part of it. The provost is what vice provost that we've asked that would come on to be one of the monitors on that situation.
I'm way over. I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Senator Reid.
Well, thanks very much. Welcome, Madam Secretary. And I'm not a great mathematician, but I think you were talking about $1 trillion. I believe.
They claim this money is to help poor kids. But what poor kids? Where are the names, the stats, the success stories? They don't have them. And they don't want to have them. Because if they had to prove results, they'd be exposed for the fraud that this whole bloated mess really is. And this is the problem with federal overreach in education. It's not about helping students, it's about controlling the narrative, feeding the university complex, and funding institutions that hate everything this country stands for. Let's be real here. How many of these universities even teach kids to love America anymore? To understand the Constitution? To honor the flag? No, they're too busy pushing gender ideology, critical race theory, and anti-American garbage, and now we know they're doing it with trillions in taxpayer money and zero strings attached. And it gets worse. In the same breath, we're told about a standoff between the Trump administration and Harvard University. The president says Harvard violated federal law. The response? Harvard says, no, we didn't, but even if we did, we pinky promise we won't do it again. Pinky promise. This is how the elites treat federal law, like it's optional, like it's beneath them. And then, when the administration asks Harvard to just submit to a monitor, a neutral party to make sure they're playing by the rules, Harvard says, nah, just trust us. Trust us. The same institution that sues the federal government when asked to follow the law? Let me tell you something. If a small business owner told the IRS, just trust me, they'd be in jail before sundown. But if you're Harvard, you get to thumb your nose at the law and sue the government into submission. This is not how a republic works. This is how aristocracies work, and it's exactly what our founding fathers fought to destroy. Here's the truth, folks. The education industrial complex is a multi-billion-dollar racket. It is subsidized by your money. It is protected by federal agencies that refuse to hold it accountable. And it is run by elites who laugh at the laws they demand you obey. We don't need more bureaucrats. We don't need more spending. We need bold, unapologetic reform. We need to end federal subsidies to any university that refuses full financial transparency. Demand audits for every dollar spent in programs like TRIO. Tie funding to results, not feelings. And if institutions refuse oversight, cut them off. Let the ivory towers fall if they can't stand on their own. Let them beg alumni for donations instead of robbing you blind through your taxes. And while we're at it, let's bring back education that actually teaches kids something useful and true, instead of indoctrinating them into hating their own country. This is what we're fighting for here at Founding Voice America. Truth, accountability, and the unapologetic defense of the American taxpayer. Because when your government can't tell you where $1 trillion went, and doesn't even bother to check, that's not a mistake. That's a betrayal. So hit that like button, subscribe, and share this video far and wide. Wake up your neighbors. Shake your representatives. And remind this government who it works for. Because as long as we have a voice, a spine, and a constitution, we will not be silenced. This is Founding Voice America. And we're just getting started.